Now, some might say this is a winter dessert, but for me, I like to say it's an anytime dessert. It's a liquid center chocolate pudding. Decadent liquid chocolate oozing out of the center. How could it not be an all year round dessert? What's not to love about a liquid center chocolate pudding, especially since it can all be made in the one bowl? To start, we're going to melt butter and some good quality dark chocolate. You can go as bitter as you want, so 80%, 70%, and then you're going to reduce the amount of sugar as well. A little bit of sea salt. Dutch processed cocoa powder, which makes it richer, darker, but the most important thing is it's more water soluble, which is great for recipes. This particular cocoa powder I'm using has between 22 and 24% fat. Some cocoa powders can have as little as 4% fat. So when you're adding those cocoa powders into your recipe, they can dry out the pudding a little bit. So always go for the maximum amount of fat you can to get a really nice moist texture. I'm going to microwave this just until everything is melted. Everything is melted. It doesn't necessarily have to be hot. Place the eggs into a bowl. When you're baking, it's always better to have your eggs, egg yolks and egg whites at room temperature before you start mixing. I'm going to add in some sugar. I'm going to mix these two together. You don't need to aerate it at all. We're just going to combine them. So this dessert can be made up to 24 hours in advance. So you can make it the night before your dinner party, and then they just take 8 to 9 minutes to bake prior to serving. I'm going to put in our chocolate base. Do you know one thing I always think to myself that's really fortunate is I'm not a raw batter eater. So many people I know eat the batter at this stage once it's mixed. I can't stand it. I'm always a finished product eater, but imagine if I was both. Plain flour. This is where you shake and you stop and parts of my body is still shaking. I sieve the flour in. We used to sieve the flour because there used to be foreign objects in flour a long, long time ago, well before I was born. But now I just sieve it so that it evenly incorporates and it's nice and light, so then it's easy to mix into the batter. That's how easy it is. The batter's ready. We're now going to prepare some cake rings to put the mixture into, and then they're going to go into the fridge for a minimum of 8 hours. Now I'm using little individual cake rings, but you can also use a coffee cup. If you use a coffee cup, you're not going to unmold it, so you're going to serve it in the coffee cup, but coffee cups are great to bake in. If you can get some of these are great. At a push, I have been known to tape with masking tape some egg rings together to give me a similar size. They're a little bit wider, but you can get a similar height. What you're going to do, because every oven is different, and I often make these at different schools or different places, I cut a little square of baking paper and I put a ring on top, spray some vegetable oil spray inside, and then we place a piece of baking paper in. It's quite high, so it allows for the fact that the pudding itself is going to rise up. What I do with the square is I put the pudding mixture into there, and the one with the square underneath, I use that as my tester, taste tester if you like, but it tests the oven because you don't want to serve these and have them cooked all the way through. You want to ensure that the center is liquid, and the only way to do that if you're using a new oven is to test one before you actually serve them. So this could take between 8 and 9 minutes, and I'm going to tell you what to look for to know when they're still liquid in the center. Now I'm going to place these into the oven, and they cook at 180 degrees for approximately 8 to 9 minutes. With your tester, test that one first and break it open to ensure that it's still liquid, so that when you serve your guests, you know that each and every one is going to have a liquid center and not be baked the whole way through. So you need to fill these about a thumbnail from the top of the ring. Try not to get any on the paper, otherwise it can burn and fall back in. These now need to go into the fridge for a minimum of 2 hours prior to baking. But as I said, you can make these up to 24 hours in advance and then just pull them out to bake prior to serving, as long as you've done your little test here. This is exactly why we do a tester, because every single oven is different. So it could take up to 12 minutes to cook your pudding. The most important thing is that it's liquid inside. What you're looking for is for it to be cakey around the outside and a little bit shiny in the center. Here we go. Now these must be served when they're hot. If you let them sit on the tray for too long, they will continue cooking and you're less likely to have a liquid center. If you enjoyed that episode, you will love my channel. Subscribe today for even more tutorials on chocolate and baking. Best of all, it's free, so get on it.